You're in the wilderness? Yeah, God's got me in the wilderness. Folks, biblically speaking, none of you who are saved are in the wilderness. God does not put people in the wilderness. Listen, the Israelites received the entire promised land in one day, right? They possessed it bit by bit. But they received the whole thing in one day. You are not in a wilderness. Now, God led them through the wilderness, right? God took them to the promised land. He led them through the wilderness. We think it's God's will that we spend time in the wilderness, right? Well, he did it to the Israelites. No, folks, the Israelites did it to themselves. You think God wanted them in the wilderness? No. He said, let's go this way. We're going to walk through here. We're going to go right into the promised land. Hey, where did they go? Hey, we want to stay out here. We want to die out here. That's what happened. It wasn't God's putting them in the wilderness. It was God leading them through the wilderness. And a lot of Christians, they choose to live in a wilderness and then they blame God. And that is really considering him to be rude, that he would have any unfinished business in that way. He would leave you in a perpetual state of unfinishedness or incompletion. That's not the heart of God. Love does not date someone for 10 years and then break up with them. I see this when I had a singles group here. It was amazing to me. Couples would be, how long have you been dating? 6 years. How old are you? Well, I'm 34 and she's 31. 6 years you've been dating? And then 2 years later they break up. What's that? That's bizarre. Listen, when a couple comes to me and they start dating and they want some accountability, it might surprise you unless one of them is the devil himself, which in case, if somebody's the devil, I usually or they act like the devil, I do my best to say, you need to wait 12 years before you get married, But when a couple comes to me for counseling who starts dating, I will almost always say to them, I would give it about 6 months, and then once we can get along, this is what we want, then I would set a date. Folks, do you know that there is something in relationship, the way God designed it, there is a time in all relationship that it must come to a consummating point, okay? It must come to consummation. And these couples date for 5 or 6 years, and what happens is they go way past the time where a consummation of that relationship, meaning marriage, okay? Because some of you are saying, what are you talking about? We consummated it 3 years ago. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. When you consider the repercussions of the act of bringing something to completion and fruition at the beginning of a relationship, sounds kind of silly, doesn't it? We wonder why those relationships don't work in the end. But there is a point where if a relationship does not come to consummation, it begins to rot and it begins to stink. And it's not a good thing. Because we were created for things to come to completion. All relationships must come to different levels and come to different points of consummation and completion. That's the way we were created. Many marriages, because if you are married here, many of you are, I am amazed. A lot of marriages, you're like, well, thank God he's not talking to us. We have, here we are. We've been married for 10 years. Yeah, but there are a lot of marriages, and in fact, I hate to sound even pessimistic, but most marriages, they're not married. The Bible says one will put 1,000 to flight, 2 will put 10,000 to flight, But most married couples are only putting 2,000 to flight because they're basically two single people living together. Oh, they said the vows, they got married. But one or both of the people, it's usually the man, They don't have a finished mindset. So anytime there's an argument, divorce is brought up. And when you don't have a finished mindset in marriage, you become a very sloppy person. You talk to your wife in sloppy ways. You don't care. You want to appear single to people whenever you're out with your buddies. You want to still have a taste of that single life because there's not a finished resolve in your mind that this is forever. This is a forever mindset. So many marriages are in the exact same place as many single people in that respect. So, people get into these relationships and after a chunk of their life has been taken away because of a person who had an unfinished mindset, and they date for 6 years, and finally the person leaves them and they're crying and they're saying, I gave this huge chunk of my life away. And or marriages who end after 10 years and they're like, I've gave everything and I never got anything in return. How could this have been avoided? What were the warning signs? How, in the future, how can I make sure this doesn't happen? I mean, surely there was a warning sign that could have warned me of this, and I could have gotten out of it in the beginning rather than go through 6 to 10 years of this. What was the warning sign? Here it was. He was rude. That's the warning sign. If you're with someone who's rude, he disregarded your feelings. He was uninterested in your heart. He didn't really want to know you. He interrupted you when you tried to speak your mind. He didn't listen to you. He was unmoved when you were discomforted or you were hurt or crying. He was impatient with your personality. See, all these things are rudeness. If you try and start a relationship like that, you end up being rubbed raw, literally. And many of you know. I've been there myself. That rudeness of that person rubs your soul and your spirit raw till you were basically hamburger meat. And then we wonder why we can't function in relationships. Does this make sense? So, basically, these things that we do, they're evidence. When we're in a relationship like this, it is evidence that that person who was being rude to us or unfinished or incomplete in their mindset, they had not resolved to be with us forever. That's what it means. See, I stayed in a hotel a couple months ago. I was on a ministry trip. I was at the hotel for like 4 days, okay? Now, how do you think that hotel looked and smelled by the time I left? It was a trash heap. I mean, I would be laying down watching TV and a Coke would spill, and I'd be like, wow. It's not mine. And I know, you're saying, well, that's rude. And I felt conviction, but I just laid down until the feeling went away. And, I'm just saying, there's not mine. What do I care? And that's people's mentality. Yes, you're right. It is rude. And that's how people are in relationships. I don't have a forever covenant with you. I haven't I said the marriage vows. Everybody does that. So I'll leave if it gets tough. If I don't like it here, I'm out of here. And so it is a rude mentality throughout the entire relationship. Let me tell you, when my wife, and I'm not trying to make myself out to be the perfect, husband here, but look, you want to know why I'm not mean to my wife? Why I don't say coarse things to my wife? I'll tell you why. Because I have to not only go to bed with her at night, but I have to sleep next to her and then wake up with her in the morning. I have to go on long road trips with her sitting next to me. Do you think I'm going to sabotage my own marriage? I'm amazed at how many of us sabotage our own relationships. And we're miserable. Dr. Phil said there are no victims, there are only volunteers. And that's the truth. We sabotage. To be mean to your spouse and say hurtful things is literally the equivalent of shooting yourself in the foot. And I watch people do it. I'm like, dude, man, you got to go live with her now. But see, they're like, yeah, but I won't be around forever. That's why you do it. That's why you do it. See, I've resolved in my mind, I am never, ever, 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 ever leaving my wife. If she leaves me, I'm going to follow her and camp out on her front yard with her new husband. I'll help him out to work. See you later, Bob. I'm never leaving, So because I've resolved that in my mind, if she makes me mad, let's say she says something that hurts me, you think I'm going to say something back? Because that's what bickering is, right? We're exchanging feelings. She made me feel this way. What can I say that will make her feel this way? And I could turn around and, call her a name, but I stop myself. I'm like, I don't want to do that because I got to be in the same house with her. Is this common sense? So I don't want to sabotage my own life. But see, that finished or that completion mindset that I have, that I'll never leave, I've resolved I'll never leave, that's what makes love not rude, because love never leaves.